On the morning of December 1st, 1948, police were called to Somerton Beach, south of Adelaide, Australia. Against the seawall lay the body of an unidentified man. He appeared to be in his 40s, neatly dressed in a suit, polished shoes and a tie, clothing that seemed unusually formal for a night beside the sea. There was no wallet, no identification card, no passport, and no note explaining his presence. Every label had been removed from his clothing. He carried ordinary objects, cigarettes, matches, chewing gum, and tickets connected with public transportation. Nothing provided a name. Witnesses later reported seeing a man in approximately the same location the previous evening. Some thought he moved an arm. Others assumed he was sleeping or intoxicated. No one realised they may have been watching the final hours of one of Australia's most enduring mysteries. The post-mortem examination raised more questions than it answered. His organs were congested, his spleen was enlarged, and blood was found in his stomach. The medical findings were considered consistent with poisoning, but routine tests failed to identify any substance. Investigators considered cardiac glycosides such as digitalis or streptanthin, powerful compounds that could interfere with the heart and might be difficult to detect using the technology available in 1948. No container, syringe, or traceable dose was ever recovered. The official historical record did not establish a conclusive cause of death. 3 possibilities remained open: suicide, murder, or an undetected natural event. Every theory had weaknesses, and without a name, investigators could not reconstruct the man's life. Police photographed the body and distributed images across Australia. Fingerprints were circulated nationally and internationally. No confirmed match was found. A plaster death mask was created to preserve the shape of his face. Hundreds of people viewed the body or photographs. Some believed they recognized him: sailors, workers, former soldiers, missing relatives. Each identification eventually collapsed. The man seemed familiar to many people, but he belonged to no one. A brown suitcase had been left in the cloakroom at Adelaide railway station, and police believed it had been deposited before the man travelled toward Somerton. Inside were clothing, grooming items, scissors, thread, and other personal effects. Some clothes carried the name Keane or initials connected to that surname, yet police could not identify a missing person who convincingly matched both the name and the body. Other clothing labels had been removed. A distinctive orange thread found in the suitcase reportedly matched thread used to repair the man's trousers, making the luggage important evidence. But it still did not reveal the owner. The suitcase also suggested planning. The man had arrived somewhere by train, had changed or prepared his clothing, had left his luggage behind, and then travelled toward the beach. Investigators could not determine why. Months after the body was discovered, investigators examined the clothing again. Inside a tiny watch pocket in the trousers, they found a tightly rolled piece of paper containing only 2 printed words: Tamám Shud. The phrase comes from Persian and is commonly translated as finished or ended. It appeared at the conclusion of the Rubáiyát of Omar Khayyám, a collection of poetry concerned with time, fate, mortality, love, and the uncertainty of existence. The fragment seemed almost too deliberate: a dead man, a hidden message, and a phrase meaning the end. South Australia's official archive confirms that the paper fragment was found inside the man's fob pocket and reported to detectives during the investigation. Police then searched for the exact book from which it had been torn. Against extraordinary odds, a copy emerged. A man came forward with a copy of the Rubáiyát that had reportedly been found near his car around the time of the death. The final page had been torn, and investigators determined that the tiny fragment discovered in the dead man's pocket appeared to match the missing section. Inside the book's back cover were several handwritten lines of capital letters that looked like a cipher, along with telephone numbers. One number was connected with a nurse living near Somerton Beach, a woman named Jessica Thompson. Jessica Thompson denied knowing the dead man, but when police showed her the plaster cast of his face, investigators believed her reaction suggested recognition. She had once owned a copy of the same poetry book and, years earlier, had given it to another man. Police travelled to find him. For a moment, they believed the Somerton mystery was about to be solved. Jessica told investigators that during the Second World War, she had given a copy of the Rubáiyát to a man named Alf Boxall, who had served in the military. If he had died anonymously on Somerton Beach, the book might explain the connection. Police located him. He was alive and still possessed the copy Jessica had given him, with its final page intact. That discovery eliminated one apparently promising solution. The dead man was not Alf Boxall, but how had Jessica's telephone number entered the linked book? She denied knowing the answer, and no conclusive evidence proved that she had met the Somerton man. Yet her proximity to the beach and her number inside the book ensured that she became central to decades of speculation. The handwritten letters inside the book were arranged across several lines, with some crossed out and one line appearing repeated. Cryptographic experts examined them. No accepted solution emerged. The lines may have been too short for reliable statistical analysis, or they may not have been encrypted language at all. No official interpretation has ever been accepted, and no decrypted message has identified a killer, a spy network, or a meeting place. The sequence remains unexplained. The man died at the beginning of the Cold War, when Australia was connected to sensitive defense and missile testing activities. The absence of identification, unexplained letters, removed clothing labels, and possible poison created an irresistible spy narrative. Perhaps he was an intelligence officer. Perhaps the book contained a one-time pad. But no intelligence file has publicly established that the dead man was an operative. No decoded message revealed espionage, and no foreign government claimed him. The Cold War context made espionage possible. It did not make it proven. Jessica Thompson had a young son named Robin, and researchers later observed physical similarities between Robin and the Somerton man, including unusual dental characteristics and ear shape. This led to speculation that the unidentified man may have been Robin's biological father, which could explain why he travelled to Adelaide and why Jessica's telephone number appeared in the book. But appearance alone is unreliable, and DNA testing became the only realistic way to evaluate the theory. In 2019, South Australia's Attorney General granted conditional approval to exhume the Somerton man. In May 2021, authorities removed the remains from the grave with the objective of recovering DNA and finally identifying him. Modern forensic science offered possibilities unimaginable in 1948. Even without a direct match, genetic genealogy can compare an unknown person's DNA with distant relatives who have submitted profiles to genealogy databases, allowing researchers to construct family trees and narrow the possibilities. While authorities continued their work, a separate research team pursued another source of DNA: hair preserved inside the plaster death mask. In July 2022, University of Adelaide professor Derek Abbott and forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick announced that their DNA research had identified the Somerton man as Carl Charles Webb. Webb was born in Melbourne in 1905 and worked as an electrical instrument maker. Researchers connected the DNA profile to relatives on both sides of Webb's family tree, and family photographs discovered later appeared to show a strong resemblance between Webb and the Somerton man's preserved face. For 74 years, the question had been who the Somerton man was. The researchers believed they had answered it, but South Australia police said at the time that they were cautiously optimistic, while forensic authorities had not publicly verified the conclusion as an official identification. That distinction matters. Webb is the strongest publicly proposed identity, but the official case has not produced a publicly announced final determination answering every forensic question. Carl Webb came from a large Melbourne family. He had married a woman named Dorothy Robertson, but their marriage deteriorated. Divorce records portrayed Webb as troubled and emotionally unstable, and Dorothy alleged abuse and described an earlier suicide attempt involving ether. She later left him. Researchers discovered that Dorothy eventually lived in South Australia, creating a possible reason for Webb to travel toward Adelaide. The identification gave the dead man a family. It did not give investigators his final itinerary. The confirmed historical facts are these. An unidentified man was found dead on Somerton Beach on December 1, 1948. His clothing provided no clear identification. A suitcase believed to belong to him was located at Adelaide railway station. A tiny paper fragment bearing the words Tamám Shud was discovered in a concealed pocket, and the fragment was linked to a copy of the Rubáiyát of Omar Khayyám containing handwritten letters and telephone numbers, including one connected to Jessica Thompson. The cause of death was never conclusively established, and in 2022, private researchers announced that genetic genealogy had identified the man as Carl Webb, though authorities expressed optimism without publicly completing an official confirmation. The most straightforward explanation may be suicide. Webb's reported history included emotional instability and a previous suicide attempt. His marriage had ended, and he had become disconnected from his family. The words Tamám Shud could have been chosen as a deliberate farewell, and a fast-acting poison could explain the absence of obvious injuries and the inconclusive toxicology. But where was the poison container? Why was the paper hidden in such a small pocket? And why did the linked book contain Jessica Thompson's telephone number? If Webb was poisoned by another person, the killer may have chosen a substance difficult to detect, and the beach could have been a meeting place. But there is no confirmed evidence identifying a second person at the moment of death, no verified poison source connected to a suspect, and no established motive linking anyone to murder. The spy theory remains the most cinematic, but it depends more on atmosphere than documentation. No conclusive intelligence record has identified Webb as a spy, no government agency has claimed him, and the proposed Webb biography provides personal reasons for travel and emotional distress that do not require espionage. Jessica's telephone number remains one of the case's most important unresolved facts. She may have known Webb and chosen not to say so. The number may have been written by someone else. The book may have passed through several owners. Jessica died without publicly resolving the mystery, and silence can indicate secrecy, but it can also indicate fear, privacy, or a desire to avoid involvement in a sensational investigation. Genetic genealogy may have solved the identity mystery, but it did not solve the death. A name allows researchers to examine Webb's family, work, marriage, and movements, but identity is only the first question. Why did he travel to Adelaide? Did he meet Jessica Thompson? What did the handwritten letters mean? What substance caused his death? And did Webb choose the phrase Tamám Shud, or did someone else place it in his pocket? For most of the 20th century, the Somerton man seemed almost unreal. A nameless body, a secret code, a possible poison, and two words meaning the end. Genetic genealogy changed the story. The unidentified stranger may have been Carl Webb, not an exotic foreign agent, not a man who appeared from nowhere, but an Australian electrical instrument maker whose marriage had collapsed and whose movements had disappeared from public records? That answer makes the case more human. It does not make it simple. The suitcase connected to the body but not to a name. The book connected to the paper but not to an owner. The telephone number connected to a woman but not to a confession. And DNA connected the body to Carl Webb but not to a cause of death. The tiny scrap of paper did not create the mystery by itself. It gave the mystery a voice, finished, ended, but more than 70 years later, the final chapter still has not been written. What do you believe really happened? Do you think Carl Webb died by suicide, accidental poisoning, natural causes, or through the actions of another person? Share your theory respectfully in the comments, and if you enjoyed this investigation, subscribe to Mysterious Crime, like this video. Share it with someone who loves documentaries and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation.